Looks like we're live. We'll give it a couple of minutes.
So we wait till we have 1,000 people on to start, right?
Yeah. We got to one up Juliet here. I just got the alert on my phone. I see a couple of good looking guys there. So give it another minute or two. On my phone, I see a couple of good looking.
Could have sworn I had that muted.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. You are used to at this time seeing Juliet. You may be disappointed. She's not here today. You got a couple of goofy looking guys, the Bryans. So we are here to do a special broadcast. We are here to remember our good friend Bob Briggs in advance of his memorial service on Saturday. So really thankful for the opportunity, Juliet, put forward to us for us to just kind of facilitate a time to remember our friend and the impact that he had on us in the chamber. So as usual, you can interact with us like you always do on these broadcasts. We'd love to see your comments. If you can hit the like button, say good morning, share it to your network. This is being live streamed on Facebook and YouTube. If you're watching this after the broadcast and it's no longer live, give us the just chime in. Let us know that you're watching. You can give us a hashtag replay. I see good friend Dave Carpenter wishing good morning to the Bryans. You only have to type one name, so we're saving your finger stress. So, Dave, good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Anybody else out there? We'd love to hear from you. There's Juliet. So she is not running the broadcast today, but she is working in the background, kind of managing comments for us. And for those just, of course, they're disappointed. Yeah. For those just joining you, my name is Brian Head. I am a past chairman of the board of the Westminster Chamber of Commerce and a founding board member, along with Brian Dice, who is a founding board member, a past chairman and the current chairman. So you've got the Bryans this morning. We are here to remember our good friend, Bob Briggs, who was really the vision and the inspiration behind the chamber. So I'm going to kick us off, just kind of give you a history of the chamber. We'll kind of jump around a little bit here. Feel free to comment. We'd love to hear your stories, your memories of Bob, your first interactions with him or the chamber. We just want to kind of celebrate the impact that he had on all of us. So, Bob was, as a young man, active in the JCs, which was the junior chamber. He talked about that all the time. He loved that organization. They eventually kicked him out when he got too old for it, which I think he always was a little bit disappointed with because he loved the organization so much. But he got involved with other organizations like Rotary. There actually was a Westminster Chamber that existed decades ago, and Bob got involved with that. He eventually became the president of that chamber. At that time, there was a lot of growth going on in this area, business-wise, and folks were moving here. And a couple of the chambers in the area decided to merge and into the larger Adams County Chamber. I believe that was 83, if I'm not mistaken, Brian, that the chambers merged and became the Adams County Chamber. And then fast forward a couple of decades, and Bob ran for mayor. And as he was canvassing, he held many elected seats, which I'll get to later. But as he was running his campaign, he was out talking to folks, and he realized, with the growth that Westminster has had, and seen, and the position that we are in the state, being between Denver and Boulder, recruiting some of the types of companies that have moved to Westminster, all the things that we love about the city that make it such a great place to live, the miles and miles of trails, the open space, the parks, and then just a vibrant small business community. In addition to some of the large employers that were in our area, Bob really had a vision for rechartering the Westminster Chamber and having an organization that really championed our city for what it was, unique to the cities and counties that surrounded us. He also realized that Westminster is made up of 5 zip codes and 2 counties, and it's if you look at it on the map, there's a lot to it. So there were a lot of folks that felt left behind by one group or the other, and so Bob saw the need in our community, and just like Bob always did with needs that he saw in the community, he did his best to fill that need. So I knew Bob through Rotary. He actually knew my grandfather. They had been active both in the Arvada Rotary Club that I was a member of, and my grandpa was a member of. And Bob at one time was active in helping charter. He was a longtime member of the Westminster Rotary Club. So I had met him at several different Rotary events. And back in, I think it was 2012-ish, I heard that Bob was thinking about chartering the chamber. So I sent him a note and just said, "Hey, I'd love to be involved in this if it's something that you're doing." And he sent me a note back, within minutes, and was like, "Can you meet tomorrow at the Westminster Rec Center?" So I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So I showed up, and I think our meeting started at about 11, and I think I didn't leave there until probably 4 o'clock in the afternoon, just because Bob is talking. And if you remember Bob, I mean, he just had big vision and big plans, and he was excited about everything. And I caught the bug. It was contagious. So, we talked about what was and what could be with the chamber. And, I just told him I want to be involved in any capacity I possibly can. And that really started me on the path of Bob just kind of being a mentor and a role model for me, and eventually just a dear friend. So we chartered the chamber. We had, for those of you that were around, we had some charter board members, some people that stepped up in the community that said we wanted to help start this thing. So myself, Brian Dice, Councilor Rich Seymour was part of that group. Christine Wares, owner of Cocopelli Beer Company. There's quite a few. I'm leaving several off there, but some folks that jumped in. It was a diverse group. Brian was a part of that. And then the big thing was just getting the word out. We had a kickoff event at the Butterfly Pavilion where Bob served on the board. And we had, it was a freezing cold November night. We had people waiting outside to get in. It was so crowded. There was, hundreds of people showed up. And for a brand newly chartered organization, that was a huge boost. And so I'll kind of kick it over to Brian Dice, who is our membership chairman. It was a working board, so we all had roles that we volunteered for, and Brian got volunteered or voluntold for the membership chair. And so he could kind of speak to our strategy and just how passionate Bob was about getting people involved.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. That was a great, covered a lot of territory in a few minutes there. Good job. Yeah, so I had the year that the chamber, we had kind of the kickoff meeting, 2013. I had intended earlier in the year to start connecting with businesses in the area, just as a strategy to make those connections, and also to look for ways that we could give back to the community. And so I'd started this luncheon, and then a couple months later, I started hearing these rumblings about some people were getting together to start a new Westminster Chamber of Commerce. So I had to throw my name in that hat, went to the meeting toward the end of that year that you referenced. At this point, I knew of Bob Briggs. I think he was a city councilor even at the time, but I had never met him. But what a pleasant surprise when you do. So went to that meeting. There were quite a few of us there, filled out some information, and ended up on the board. And as I have said before, the bar was pretty low back then. Fortunately, we have standards for our board members now. So I got involved completely green, had never, really been involved in anything like that before. And as you said, so Bob really wanted the board members to be on a committee and, involved in those type of things. And as you stated, Brian, we were a working board, so we all had to kind of pitch in and do our part. We didn't have a paid staff or anything. So I decided I would join the membership committee, and I never can remember the name of this gal. She was on our board at the time.
Danielle Enriquez.
Danielle Enriquez, thank you. And so she was the chairman of the membership committee. We didn't have an ambassador committee yet. And so we were sitting in a board meeting. I want to say it was like our second or third board meeting. And Danielle announces that her significant other is moving out of state and she's going with him. And Brian, would you take over as the member chair? And I'm like, right there around the table in front of all my peers. I didn't turn it down, but I wondered several times after that if I should have. So that was a little bit of a baptism by fire experience for me, but had a great little membership committee. As a matter of fact, one of our current city councilors, Rich Seymour, was on that membership committee with me. And so we did that for a couple of years, and it was a lot of fun. I just finished this book called 10X. Don't know if you've ever read it, but that was Bob Briggs for sure. Like, if whatever you thought of, if we thought maybe we could have 100 or 200 members in the first year, Bob was like, nope, we need to have 1,000 members in the first year. And ultimately, we want to have 10,000 because, Bob had that kind of vision that he really wanted the community to be involved. He wanted residents to be involved, and he wanted the membership to be low enough that there was nobody that would, not join us because of money and that kind of thing. And so we had some low fees in those first couple of years, but I have to say, I think Bob was right. I mean, it helped us grow our numbers pretty rapidly. And from there, obviously, as anything new that you do, we had to make some adjustments eventually and kind of get on a fee schedule that a real chamber of commerce needs to have in order to have a good paid staff, like, our exec Juliet, who does almost everything now. I don't know how she gets it all done. And to be able to do the things that a chamber of commerce is really meant to do. So, we had various kinds of membership drives, and we would get some of the board members and also other members that were willing to go out and do recruiting campaigns. Of course, Bob was our lead recruiter. That guy knew everybody in town and outside of town. I want to say we used to call him Mr. Westminster. He knew a lot of people, had a lot of connections, and so obviously he was very helpful and instrumental in helping us build the membership in those early days. It was a lot of fun. We used to, you kind of hit on this, Brian, but one of the most common comments I remember us getting, we'd have these monthly after hours events, and we'd have people coming who had been part of some other organization and just either felt like it was cliquish, felt like they didn't fit in, like they didn't feel welcome. And they would talk about how welcoming an environment our chamber was. And it's true. I mean, there was an enthusiasm and excitement in the air. People wanted to come out. We would have 50 to sometimes 100 people at a business after hours. And I remember one of the things I remember, Bob in the early days made name tags for everybody. So he had this machine and printer at home, and he would make these name tags that you could slide in and pin on your shirt. So he and Shirley would have a table set up at every meeting for all the name tags for the new people that had joined in there. There were usually a bunch of them. And then he'd bring out the box wine. So we had some good adult beverages for our get-togethers. And yeah, those are the good old days. It was a lot of fun, a lot of excitement.
Those boxed wines, I think, traveled around in the back of his minivan for quite some time. So, yeah, it was funny. You mentioned that the after hours. It was always cool because you'd have, sometimes hundreds of people there, and you'd walk around, and I would ask people, how'd you hear about us? We're a brand new chamber. So I would ask people, how'd you hear about us? And almost to a person, it was, oh, Bob Briggs. I met Bob at, wherever. And they would tell the story of how Bob met him. And before they knew it, he had invited them to a chamber event. It was a lot of fun. So I want to welcome Mayor Pro Tem Dave Dumont. He is on here, another good friend of Bob. Also Jenna Swanson, I see on there. Dave Carpenter says it's no accident you're talking about history. I met Bob at the 100th birthday of Westminster when he spearheaded a monthly speaker series about Westminster history. As much as anything else, his love of history of Westminster, of the history of Westminster, was infectious, which is, it absolutely was. I mean, he wrote the book on Westminster. I had the honor a few years ago. Bob asked me to give the speech to induct him into the Jeffco Hall of Fame when he got nominated and elected to the Jeffco Hall of Fame. And it was a humbling experience for me. And I remember he called and asked if I would do it, and so I said, I'd love to. Can you send me a list of he wore a lot of different hats. Can you send me a list of your different titles or things that you've been involved in? And he sent me an email that was like 18 pages long. Had an attachment of like 18 pages where he had listed out all the things that he had been involved with. And so he wasn't just passionate about Westminster history. He was part of Westminster history. And I've got the original speech that I gave that day. I'll just kind of run through some of these things, but he went to Colorado State University and graduated with a degree in horticulture. In '61, he and his wife Shirley founded the Briggs Flower Shop and Garden Center, which became a 43,000 square foot greenhouse complex. I mentioned the JCs, the Rotary, the original Westminster Chamber. In 1978, he was elected Adams County Commissioner, where he chaired a committee with the goal to prevent the expansion of Stapleton onto Rocky Mountain Arsenal. The end effect of that committee was that the construction of Denver International Airport was initiated. So he also served as president of Adams County Economic Development, where he worked to settle a longstanding lawsuit between Westminster and Adams County, which worked to pave major streets and was instrumental in building the Front Range Airport. He has been he served on the board for years of the Butterfly Pavilion. He won their Pioneer Award, which is one of their highest honors. He was a charter member. If you visit any of the open space, I know I live in Highland Village. There's a beautiful open space with a plaque that talks about the Open Space Board. Bob was a charter member of the Open Space Board, which resulted in the citywide trail system, which has over 120 miles of trails and is responsible for 15% of Westminster's 38 square miles being preserved as open space. He also was on the board of RTD, where one of his early votes was to approve the fast tracks, the light rail, as well as the T-Rex expansion, and to get passenger rail into Union Station. If you knew anything about Bob, he was passionate about trains and commuter rail. He was working on that to the very end. So he was reelected. He served as state representative for HD 29 before Tracy Kraft Tharp took over that seat. And then he served on the Westminster City Council starting again in 2007 until he was term limited off. He wrote the book, literally wrote the book Westminster: The First 100 Years, and he was schlepping those books like everywhere he could. He would he would give them out. I know my kids got them at their school. He was a proud champion of Westminster. He helped get additional expanded water rights for Westminster and Stanley Lake, and then he's won a bunch of awards. So he was the Person of the Year from the Green Industries of Colorado. He won the Bob Cannon Award from the Associated Landscape Contractors of Colorado. He was the Rotarian of the Year for the Westminster 710 Rotary Club. He won the Regional Leadership Award from the Denver Regional Council of Governments. He was elected into the Jefferson County Hall of Fame. And then he won the Westminster, he was the first ever winner of the Westminster Legacy Award from the Westminster Chamber of Commerce. That award will be named in his honor going forward. So that'll be the Bob Briggs Legacy Award going forward. So just an incredible guy. Brian talked about the working board and how he was kind of volunteered to be the membership committee chair. Bob approached me and he said, "Do you want to be the initial government affairs chairman?" And at the time that he asked me, we had just chartered, and there were those in the city that were skeptical about our existence. The city had a longstanding relationship with another chamber. The city sent out a letter kind of highlighting the existing relationship that they had, and it ended up being great PR for us. Bob loved it. He brought out that letter all the time. It could have been one of those things that was taken as a slight or a negative or a detraction from who he was in the community. But he took it in stride, and he would show that to everybody, and he'd say, "Look what we're doing. We're causing ripples in the pond," and that's something cool. And he would come up to me at after hours, and we'd have hundreds of people, and he would tap me on the shoulder and he'd say, "This is what we're working for. This is what we're working for. Isn't this cool?" He just got so excited about that. And so when he asked me to be the government affairs chairman, there were some relationships within the city and just folks that were skeptical. We were a new organization. They didn't know exactly what we were there to try to accomplish. It was no secret that Bob had, he occasionally would get into scenarios where he was crossways with this person or that. Any politician, that's the case. Politics is a tough game. You're gonna win half the time, lose half the time, and half the time, half the population's gonna disagree with you. And Bob knew that. So he was so gracious. I remember the mayor at the time, Mayor Atchison, who had signed that letter, was among the most skeptical at first. And you might recall, Mayor Atchison has become a great friend of the chamber. He delivered a couple of State of the City addresses to us, and once COVID hit, he was on a weekly broadcast on Mondays with us. And initially, I remember the very first time that I met with the mayor and I invited him to one of our events. He was a little bit nervous about showing up, but he showed up, and people were, when he showed up, Bob was on one end of the room and the mayor was on the other. And I had a few people come over and ask me, like, how's this going to go? Because they had just run against each other, and it was, a little bit of an icy relationship. And, the mayor's making his way around the room, and Bob comes up to me and he goes, "Good job. This is what we're working for." Even though, they had their disputes, he knew the more people that we could bring into the tent, the better. And so even if it was people that he had sharp disagreements with, he wanted them involved, which I thought was just always cool. And as government affairs chair, in a divided world, that really inspired me to try to just build common ground wherever. And I can say over the years, the chamber has forged really great relationships with every single one of our elected leaders. And I'm incredibly proud of that. And that started with the tone that Bob set, that we were just going to make people feel welcome, no matter who they were. So that I thought was is kind of a takeaway from my memories. I know that Emilio, who's our ambassador chair, has joined us. Welcome, Emilio. Juliet, if there's any comments, we'd love to get to some comments. Mayor Pro Tem Dave Dumont. Good morning, friends. Thanks for honoring Bob. Bob, he was a good man. He, above anything else, he was a great man. That's true. Thanks, Dave, for tuning in. Dave Carpenter chimes in, and Bob's reviving of the chamber along with you two and the character members was a great way for community members and businesses to meet and interact. Thanks, Dave, for saying that. That's, it was awesome. Brian mentioned, but we had people that just felt like they'd been left behind by, not just by other groups, but, they felt like the community was growing beyond them, or, they just didn't have a fit. And I remember, people would get, teary-eyed sometimes at our events or at our board meetings, or just because the goal was just to make everybody feel welcome. And, like Brian said, I remember we had, the lowest possible dues in anywhere in the state. And we were all volunteer at the beginning. And so there was a lot of discussions about how do we get to a point where we can hire staff and that kind of thing, because we all had day jobs that we needed to get back to. And I remember Bob saying, well, at $100, if we get 10,000 members, that's $1 million a year. We can do whatever we want. And so his vision, I think, was just for every business, certainly in Westminster, but even surrounding Westminster, to join. I remember there was an after hours where we had some folks that had driven down from Fort Collins because they had heard about what we were doing, and he was just tickled with that. He was just thrilled. So, that was cool. And, I think, as I remember, Bob, those early board meetings, we used to meet in the back of Lake Arbor Automotive. So you'd go in past the front desk, and they used to have a conference room. Now I think they've made it another bay for their mechanics to work in, but they used to have a conference room back there, and that's where we would meet. And Dana Teeple, who owns that, was gracious with his space. He would let us store our stuff there. And I remember, our board meetings, I think we're at 11, Brian, and we would show up, and sometimes we wouldn't get out of there till 2 or 2:30, and there would just be discussions. And I used to get frustrated with Bob because we would sometimes get off on these wild tangents that somebody just had an idea. And I used to get frustrated. I'd even tell him, like, Bob, you've never heard an idea that you didn't like. Like, you give credit to some of these ideas that probably, don't merit the discussion. And, as I grew in my relationship with Bob, and he kind of was a mentor to me, I realized that wasn't a weakness of Bob's. That was one of Bob's biggest strengths, is that he absolutely believed in you. And he if you had an idea, he wanted to flush it out. He wanted to run with it as far as it would track. And that, for those of us that were there, those charter board members, we hadn't done this before. None of us had started a new chamber before.
Right.
And so just that opportunity to run and have Bob as your biggest fan cheering you on and encouraging you to think outside the box. We are where we are because of that vision. So, Brian, I'll let you kind of fill in with anything I missed.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Bob never heard a bad idea. There was no such thing in his world. But you're also right that's what makes him that visionary, that innovator. Even with the chamber, he was there, involved in everything the first couple of years, and then he kind of took a back seat. He would still come around. He was still excited about the chamber, but he's on to bigger and better things. That's why you have a list of things longer than your arm of his accomplishments, because he was always charging and moving forward. One of the things I think that, a lot of great qualities in a guy like Bob, obviously, one that kind of sticks out to me, I guess, in my mind, is that he always, as you said, like, he was your biggest champion. I don't care who you are. He was your biggest champion. Like, he saw the positive qualities and the strengths or whatever. But I was absolutely like out of my element. And there's no doubt that he knew that when we first started this thing. There was just a lot I didn't know. I didn't even know what I didn't know. But Bob would never make you feel, he always made you feel like you're an important, valued member of the team. He would encourage you, nothing but praise. You never felt like you're being talked down to or dismissed because he knew whatever you were saying or doing was ridiculous. He just would always be your biggest champion. And so I feel like, even to the extent that, whatever was going on, whatever the project might be, whatever you're trying to do, Bob you felt like you were talking to your dad when you talked to Bob. He was just having a conversation. He might be teaching you something. He might be sharing information you didn't know. He might just be, trying to engage you in his next great idea or whatever. But you always felt like you were just, kind of having a conversation with your dad. You knew that guy knew a lot more than you did, had a lot more experience than you, but you never felt like you were being talked down to one bit. Just one of the guys. So love that about Bob.
Yeah, it's true. He was, Bob saw things not as they were, but as they could be. He was always looking so far ahead. And, I even think about, none of us could have predicted COVID coming along. But if you think about the things that Juliet and the Chamber have done since the pandemic hit, a lot of, Bob was setting us up from those early days to be responsive to this kind of thing, and to be able to provide services to our community. I mean, we distributed PPE, we provided information, timely information. We did these broadcasts, that kind of thing. And that was all part of his vision a decade ago when he was thinking about starting this. And you mentioned, like, he never looked down on you, he never talked indifferent. I remember the Westminster 710 Rotary Club did a roast of Bob Briggs several years ago, and it was hilarious. There were some great speeches. I think Senator Faith Winter gave probably the funniest speech I've seen at a roast like that of Bob, and she pulled off her jacket, and she had a Bob Briggs face on her T-shirt. It was amazing. And she joked about him jumping into any political race that was open, including her child's student council race. It was good, but during that roast, they played a slideshow of photos of Bob, and there's a photo of him and President Ronald Reagan, on a stage when Ronald Reagan came to visit Colorado and made an appearance at Adams County. And I believe it was the Adams County Fair, actually, that he appeared at, but I could be wrong on that. I know he just visited Adams County, and Bob was at the time an Adams County commissioner and just active there. But the picture is not one that you would expect that somebody would take with a president of the United States. Reagan is off to one side of the stage, and he's kind of waving and just doing the politician thing. And Bob is looking kind of down off stage. And I asked Bob after it, what was going on in that picture. I didn't know that he had gotten to meet President Ronald Reagan. And so he tells me, President came out he was trying to support some legislation. So he's stomping around the country, and he stopped in Colorado, and Bob got to share the stage with him. And I asked him, like, that's kind of a strange photo. Did you get like one of those grip and grin photos that you usually see people when they meet the president? And he said, no, And he said he actually had seen somebody off the stage. So Bob is talking to somebody that he hadn't seen in years off the stage while he's next to President Reagan. And that's who Bob was. Like, you were not any more or less important because you held a certain title. He could be standing next to the President of the United States and still be just as excited to see somebody from the Rotary Club or the JCs or any number of the organizations he was involved in. And I sat back that night after he told me that, and I was just like, they broke the mold after him. I mean, he made every person feel like they were just as important as the next. And that's really been, Brian can speak to this too. It's been the underlying mission of the chamber since then, is just to build a big tent and make people feel like they're welcome here in the community.
Absolutely. Totally agree. And I also, part of that personality that Bob had, but I was kind of taken back and also impressed, and especially as this progressed over the years, that even though Bob had as much ownership of what we were doing with the chamber, what we're trying to create as he did, that he had no problem stepping away, turn it over to his generals, and basically sick them. And he trusted us to do that. I'm not sure that was the smartest thing he could have done, but we got through it. And I mean, there have been times we've talked where we're struggling with different issues or whatever, stuff we hadn't done. Of course, Bob was always there if we needed to go confer with him, but he wasn't wrong. We figured it out, and it was a great learning experience. Building this chamber has been I think other than having my kids and grandkids, the best experience of my life. And we owe that to Bob Briggs. I mean, he started this whole thing. No telling, but my guess is all this time later, we still wouldn't have a local chamber if it wasn't for that guy.
It's true. It's true. I see Mayor Pro Tem Alberto Gonzalez, former Mayor Pro Tem. He served with Bob on council. They were, good friends, very close. So welcome, Alberto. Feel free to chime in with any kind of memories. But you're right, Brian. It was like when you're learning to swim and they throw you in the pool, with no life vest, or riding a bike when your parents would let go of the seat and you're teetering off. But I remember, there was times in those early days where I would talk to him 4 or 5 times a day. He'd call me with an idea or to let me know this or that is going on. There was things he would nominate me for or to be a part of that I was wildly underqualified to participate in, but he would just, sort of throw me in and I owe to echo what you said. I think this chamber's been just such a great experience. I can say, some of the best friends I've ever made are through this group. And even when things have gotten hard, over the years or challenges have presented themselves, I stay dedicated to the organization because of that initial vision of a place that people can belong and a champion for the place that we all call home. So he was great. Welcome, Peter Brissett, I see is on as well. Good morning, Peter. We're sharing memories of Bob Briggs. We're wrapping up here pretty quick, just in the next couple of minutes. But if anybody has some parting comments, we'd love to share them here. If you watch this after the broadcast ends, give us a hashtag replay, and feel free to leave your comments about Bob. For those that are interested, Bob's memorial service will be this Saturday, January 15th at 10:30 a.m. It's the in-person version is going to be at the Westminster Rec Center at 104th and Sheridan. Seating is limited, so the city has graciously offered to live stream it on their official channels. So you can find that on YouTube. I believe that'll be in the comments. The family has asked that in lieu of flowers, folks donate in Bob's memory to the Westminster Presbyterian Church, where he was leader and an elder for over 50 years. The Westminster Historical Society, Dave Carpenter mentioned Bob's passion for history, you could make a contribution in his name to that great group of people. In the Butterfly Pavilion, I know my kids love going to the Butterfly Pavilion. They used to for years call it the Butterfly Cabillion because they couldn't pronounce pavilion. So we would go to the Butterfly Cabillion, and you see Bob over there frequently. So you can make a donation to that organization, which is, I believe, still to this day the largest insect zoo anywhere in the world, and it's right here in Westminster. So, and Bob's a big part of the reason that happened. So, again, I see former Mayor Pro Tem Alberto Garcia with a comment here. There are so many amazing things that can be said about Mr. Briggs. He had such a respect for Westminster's history, but wasn't one who thought things should never change. He respected our city's history, but had a vision to make this community even better. And that's spot on, Alberto. We were talking about how, and he continues, it was truly an honor to serve with him and call him a friend. That it's absolutely true, as an honor. And we were talking about, Bob saw things not as they were, but as what they could be. And, before, as we were chartering, none of the new downtown area had been built out. The concepts were just starting to be thrown around. Bob knew what that would mean. The rail station wasn't completed. The rail hadn't come through, but he knew it was coming. So, he definitely, you're right. He didn't, he wasn't, he wasn't stagnant. He realized the history, and sometimes, studying history, you realize not just what was, but what could be. And that was one of Bob's really great strengths. So, I think Juliet's letting us know there's going to be some donate buttons, either pasted below, links to them, or on those three, the sites of those three organizations that we mentioned. So again, to recap, Bob's memorial service this Saturday, January 15th at the Westminster Rec Center, 10:30 a.m. Seating is going to be limited. And with the uptick in COVID cases, if you're more comfortable watching at home, the city's going to live stream those that on their YouTube channel. The link is there, pasted in the comments. In lieu of flowers, the family's asking for donations to the Westminster Presbyterian Church, the Westminster Historical Society, and or the Butterfly Pavilion. All three of those organizations Bob was a champion of for decades, and it would be a great way to honor him to donate. I know I'll be doing that, and Brian will as well. So, any parting thoughts, Brian? I think we're bumping up against our time here.
Nope. I mean, there's way too much with Bob Briggs to wrap your arms around, but I feel good about the things that we touched on, especially, several things that you did. And I mean, that guy will be part of our lives forever, never forgotten.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I'll close with the last time I saw Bob was at our gala, just, a couple of months back. And it was one of the larger in-person events that we've been able to hold since the pandemic started. And we were trying to do everything as safely as possible. And I got a chance to go over and hang out with Bob and Shirley for a minute. And, just like always, Bob liked to kind of stand in the back of the room and just kind of look. And whenever he would come to an event, I had a kind of a habit of going up to him and saying, we'd look at the room together, and I'd say, this is your vision right here. This is what you built. And Bob kind of looked over at me, and he acknowledged the mayor won an award that night. He was recognized for his efforts, and again, Bob and the mayor weren't particularly close over the years. And one of the biggest challenges was to get the mayor and others to really just buy into our value to the community. And we did that. And I remember standing at the back of the room with Bob and just looking at the folks that were there. We had a United States congressman, we had county commissioners, we had state representatives. And we had, small business owners and big business owners. And it was a great mix of people. And it was a diverse group. And so I did my usual, I went back there and stood by him and just told him, this is all because of you. This was a great idea that you had. And Bob said, how far we've come. We've come so far. And so I think, today we live in a divided society, and it's a hard time to just be. So I think, if you want to do anything to honor Bob, make donations to those organizations, and think about him and say a prayer for his family. But more than anything, find a way to include somebody. Find a way to go out there and make somebody feel welcome in our community. Build a bigger tent, and that would honor Bob, because that's what he wanted to do with this group. So I appreciate Juliet and the chamber letting us come on here and hijack the broadcast to remember our good friend and mentor and just all around hero, Bob Briggs. He will be missed. It's hard to say it, but his he lived a long life, and it feels like it wasn't long enough, because we all have things that we wanted to say to him. But I'll go out, and I challenge you all to as well, just to try to build a bridge, build a bigger tent, make somebody feel welcome, honor Bob in that way. And we sure appreciate you all tuning in today. If you're watching later, leave your memories. We'd love to read them and respond to them as we can. So with that, we'll close it out. Thanks, everybody.